people, many of them who were millionaires. They were given $115 million, $140 million, where they were being fired for having so many people lose their homes. We talk about an economic bailout for banks and investors. Well, I think we need an economic bailout for education at this point, don't you? You know, we need an economic bailout for education. And you know, all of these things happen, and we wonder, how could they have happened? How could all this happen? Because we are in a democracy where we elect people to represent us, and yet these terrible things can happen. Well, it's important that as you graduate and you know that your learning is not finished, that your learning is just beginning, right? And so that we can really be prepared so that these injustices could not continue to happen. Do you know, as we talk about these multimillionaires who are getting all these millions of dollars while people are losing their homes, and who would see the day in our country, the richest in the world, where we would have so many empty houses and so many homeless people? You know, who would have thought that that could happen? So that means that we really have to be informed. There was a Spanish philosopher named Jose Ortega y Gasset, and he made the statement, if you do not have an educated citizenry, if people are not educated, then that means that in your country you can have mob rule. That those that are the greedy and the powerful can control what is going on in a country. So we've got to renew this fight for education, because we could not have justice if people are not educated. We could not do this. You've heard the speakers before me that have issued a call to you, and they said, come back, come back, come back, come back and bring justice to your community. Again, here we are in this area where we feed the world. And the farm workers that feed us are still among the poorest of all. In New York State, this last week, they were fighting to get farm workers in New York State 1 day of rest. 1 day of rest. That law is stalled in their state senate. We have made progress in California, thanks to people like Cesar Chavez, but we still have a long way to go, because farm workers throughout the country, they do not have, even if they get hurt on the job, nobody pays their medical bill. Nobody pays the time that they are absent. And I'd love to say to students, and I'll say this to you, if you had to be out there on that deserted island, like in Survivor, and you could only take one person with you, who would you take? An attorney or a farm worker? And I say this because as you have to remember, as I talked about being educated, educado, as they say in the Spanish language, that people can have a lot of intelligence, but they never had the privilege that you have today of going to college. So that means that people on these grounds who are the caretakers, people that were in the cafeteria, many of your parents or grandparents that never had a chance to go to college, they are very intelligent, and they can be very educated also. And so you, as graduates, your calling of justice and unity and wisdom is to come back to your community and to erase these injustices that have happened. And I want to add one more injustice, which some of you may, when I say this, they're going to say, what? Do you know that our minimum wage today should be $25 an hour? If we would have kept up with the cost of living, people who work in Jack in the Box, okay, you know, or out in our fields, their minimum wage should be $25 an hour. That's what some of you will be earning maybe when you get out there and get your jobs. So that means that there's something wrong with our economic system. And we hear these words that have been hurled at our President Obama, and they say, wow, he's talking about socialism, because they gave, banks money, and they gave the auto workers money the auto companies money to be able to survive. Well, I want you to reflect on this, and you all know how to use your computers. So when you hear those words, think of which are the socialist countries. Countries like Norway, Scandinavian countries, Denmark, You know, countries like Norway, where they have a law that says that 40% of the women in their Congress, 40% of the people in their Congress have to be women. 40%. If we look at our U.S. Congress, we have 17% of our Congress are women, right? So that means we have a long way to go to get gender balance. So these are the challenges that are ahead of you, but I know that you're up to it. So I want you to read, continue your education, go to those sources of information other than Rush Limbaugh, okay? Let's go to, on your computers, get Democracy Now! Remember that, Amy Goodman. Read Nation Magazine, The Progressive, get the New York Times, Atlantic Magazine, Mother Jones, some of these magazines that can really give you more information. And be aware of the laws that our president is trying to pass. One of them, which will help people that are coming after you, or you if you go on to your doctorates, which I hope many of you do, to change the way that your school loans are given to you. Because it is a ripoff right now. It is a total ripoff. Loans should come from the government and not from the bankers, okay? Loans should come from the bankers. That means that you've got to hit your computer and you've got to send an email to your congressman and to your senators and to your relatives that are in other states, because we're in pretty good shape in California. You know, we've got to change the way that our grants are given to students. It's unfair that you have to graduate, like my grandson, who graduated from UC Berkeley and has got, what, $80,000 in school loans. This is wrong, because that means that you are tied up with economic chains and you cannot do what you want to do. One more. For economic justice, there's a law out there in the Congress that they're going to be talking about. And this law is to give workers the right to organize by signing a card that chooses who they want to represent them. Hey, listen, if your signature is good enough to get a loan for school, if it's good enough to buy a car, buy a house, get a passport, get a marriage license, and yes, if Proposition 8 is overturned, it will apply to everybody. All right? Equality marriage, that's a sense of justice also. Well, if your signature is good enough for that, it ought to be good enough for you to join a union. What do you think? Okay? And I want to say this because unions, and I know we don't have labor studies here. In fact, there's only 2 state universities in California that have labor studies, a degree in labor studies. But remember this, labor unions are the ones that brought us public education, that brought us safety standards, that brought us unemployment insurance, that brought us Social Security. And yes, they did a lot for the civil rights movement. So we have to remember and be knowledgeable about the things that brought us here today. We only have one human race. We have a lot of different nationalities. We have a lot of different cultures. But we only have one human race, Homo sapien. So we can say to those people like the KKK, Ku Klux Klan, Aryan Nation, White Citizens Council, get over it, you're Africans, right? Get over it. We are all Africans of different shades and colors. And the word that I want to share with you is a Zulu word, and we have to fight for unity, wisdom, and justice. So the word is Wozani. Can you say that word? Okay, I want everybody to shout that word, Wozani. Because we are so proud that we are one human race, and not only that, but that our cousin Obama was elected president. Okay, so I'm going to say 1, 2, 3, and let's all of us shout together, Wozani, remembering that we are one in unity, wisdom, and in our fight for justice for everyone. So let's go, 1, 2, 3, and then let's all shout Wozani. 1, 2, 3, Wozani! One more time, 1, 2, 3, Wozani! Now, can we create justice in our society? Somebody, okay, let's do it. Yes, we can. Sí, se puede. Everybody, let's go. Sí, se puede. Okay, thank you very much. Congratulations.
That was really funny. I was kind of expecting it, but not that heavy.